Hello, Robin. You are up next.
Hey, how's it going, Bart?
How's it going, Robin? And where are you playing out of?
This is from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
That's right. I remember I I remember when you first emailed in, I had said, "Are you a woman?" And you said no, and I remembered that, and I was like, I didn't do it this time.
There
So
you go.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. I was just in Quebec City, and Montreal a few weeks ago.
Beautiful.
I have been to Halifax once. I've been to PEI before they had the bridge. Dating myself, actually. Never had a chance to play any type of poker in Halifax, but maybe one day. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
Yeah, oh,
There's a
okay.
lot of games.
So what's the game that you're playing in here?
So we're at the casino. We're playing 2-5.
Uh-huh.
It's nine-handed.
What's the buy-in spread here?
So it's 100 to 500.
Oh, so it's very short, kind of a shallow buy-in structure.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we're 2,900 effective.
Wow, okay. So this is like for some of you guys that have played Commerce or say like Hollywood Park in LA, $5 blind structure, 500 cap. It's usually, I don't know if there's bigger games in the room, but those are usually very recreational $5 blind games in LA. And of course, you can get deep with somebody, and this would be when, like, if you're this deep in a 500 cap game, it's really gold, as I tell people a lot, like in terms of like win rate, how win rate is not necessarily a static number. And that if you really want to push your win rate, you should be playing marathon sessions when you're deep and you're winning with other people that are also deep, because it's not that common. And you could say, like, if there's some other people that are this deep, if you're 2,900 effective, your win rate could be 2x what it normally is to start the game off. So 2,900 effective. Okay.
Yeah, and this was only about maybe 3.5, 4 hours into the session. And the opponent has me covered. So he's also very deep. So this was an action table from the very beginning.
Okay.
There's an early position limp
Okay.
from a gentleman that is very, very known for limp jamming.
So he's a limp re-raiser.
He's a limp re-raiser, and it's almost never just a raise. It's usually an all-in.
And how deep is he?
He's about 400.
All right. So you have an EP habitual limp re-raiser who's 400 deep, who limps in EP. Okay.
Yeah. Jams like ace jack, 8s, 9s, 7s, doesn't really like playing post flop, just wants to essentially just run it.
Okay.
So the gentleman right next to him, I guess basically also early position or kind of middle position, raises to 50.
So 50 over a limp. Okay.
Yeah. And I flat the hijack with ace king of spades.
All right. So obviously you gave us that background here. This is, you can correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth incorrectly, but I assume you almost always 3-bet this hand, but you want the guy to limp jam.
100%. Yeah, I'm just trapping the early position, and I do this. I mean, I play with this guy a lot. I do this, a lot when I see him limp, especially early limps. He's very prone to just jamming it in with hands that I just have completely, crushed.
So MP to 50, hero calls as a trap because of this EP habitual limp re-raiser in the hijack with ace king of spades. Okay.
Yeah, and now the limper just flats the 50.
No, there you go. So EP calls. And again, I mean, I have seen this. I didn't play a ton of like heavily restricted 500 games because I would just be playing in these games while I was waiting for 510. But I understand, the thought process, and, some people will be like, I would never flat here. Why don't you just play it straight up? But I mean, I get it. How we can figure out if, just always 3-betting is probably going to win you more money. I mean, here's the thing. Sure, you can 3-bet some hands here where the EP limper was going to limp shove and then he just folds out. The only thing I would say, though, is that when he limps and people know he's a habitual limp re-raiser, and then the guy to his left goes 50 and then you call, unless everybody's oblivious, though, he would probably notice that some people are trapping him, and then just that sheer action itself against somebody who loves to limp jam should be kind of strong anyways, as a counter to what you did.
Yeah, of course. And some people make the point that maybe it's better to just trap pairs instead of ace king and ace queen, because you still need to make your hand, whereas with a with a pair, you already have something made before the flop. I don't know. I just, he just does it so often that it just seemed like a good spot. And that was the time that I chose.
And remember, the EP guy only has 400. You're 2,900 effective with,
Right.
I'm assuming, the MP guy, right?
Exactly. The MP player is the one who has me covered.
All right. So what, like 150 three-ways now?
Exactly. So the flop comes, super spicy. It comes ace, queen, 7 with 2 spades.
So ace of clubs, queen of spades, 7 of spades, something like that?
Yeah, you got it.
And you have ace, king of spades.
Yeah, top, nut flush draw.
Okay, that's a good flop for you.
Yeah, it's a monster. So the EP now checks, and the middle position raiser, the initial raiser, he now just open jams for 3,000.
What?
Yeah, and now it's on me. It's one of the more bizarre hands that I've ever played.
He jams for like
3K essentially.
What? Oh, you start. Well, you 20. You said you started like 2,900, something like that.
Yeah, and he has me covered.
So it's like 2,850, something like that. 2,850 into 150.
Into 150.
Wow. I mean, here's the thing about this is that the way that I would, this is definitely bizarre. I mean, obviously the way that I would look at this is, people are like, call. Here's the thing about this is, one of the first things that I would think about in this hand is, what is my equity against ace queen? That's what I would think. What is my equity here against ace queen or ace 7?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a flip.
Is your equity, so obviously if he has a hand like ace 7, but again, just a little background, like ace 7, like he's raising a habitual limper. Obviously it's better if he has ace 7 because you have more, you're going to be favored more. Against ace queen, you've got 9 spade outs. 3 outs to a king. So yeah, it's pretty close. You're probably like 45%, something like that. What else does he make this play with here? If he just had like ace king, that'd be awesome for you because it's like it's a unbelievable free roll. I don't know I mean, this like kind of takes me back to like 2005, 2006. I mean, have you ever seen a play like this before? Who is this guy from MP?
Yeah, so a little history on this guy. From what I've played, from the history of that I have with this player, at the time when he made the shove, the first point is he wouldn't raise 50 with ace 7 pre.
Right.
I know that for sure.
Yeah.
7s, he would raise 50 pre.
You don't think he would raise 7? Do you think that he would? Do you think? Because I was kind of even just throwing out like the sets. I mean, obviously, there's only one combo of ace ace. It just seems absurd to make that bet. And then queen queen, sure, he unblocks an ace, but how often do we see a guy? Why would somebody do that? I mean, maybe unless he's just kind of like considering like having like ISOing like the limper to sort of just get it in with him. The other thing of note here too, which is kind of interesting about the specific part of your hand, like if you had like ace 5 of spades is obviously going to do worse versus ace queen. But what I was kind of thinking of is that because you have ace king of spades, he can't have like a dominated combo draw. Like if you had ace 5 of spades and he had like king jack of spades, like you would have just enormous equity, right?
Absolutely.
Like you'd probably over 90%, I would think.
Yeah, he's close to drawing dead.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a gut shot, and then he's got like runner, 2 pair outs. But because you have ace king of spades, then the only real combo draw that he could have here would be like jack 10 of spades here, right? Pretty much.
And it would be such a ridiculous bet to make that with a hand that isn't nutted. My thought process when the initial bet happened was I wanted to know how much it was. Because I was obviously seriously contemplating calling right away the moment he made the bet. But I did feel like this was ace queen minimum, just from my history with the player. And then the second thought that was going through my head was, is he even aware I'm in the hand? And the only reason I thought that was because the guy that was limping was right next to him.
So Nate here did a quick thing. He said, we have 40% equity versus ace queen, ace 7, 7, 7, and queen queen here. But that's not, from what you're saying, kind of like what I think. I don't think it's a realistic range. Like I probably tend to agree with you. He probably doesn't really have much ace seven here, which is actually bad for you because that's one of the part of that combo that you actually have the most equity against.
Yeah.
But you don't think he has necessarily 7-7 just because you don't think he's raising that much. And then, you're like, well, does queen always do this? There's 3 combos, maybe 1 out of the 3. This is how you can just go into Poker Cruncher and just kind of like do the combo work. And obviously, if you need 40%, you don't have that. I mean, this is in No Limit. We don't usually see this. Of course, it's possible. I mean, you need more like 48% here to make this call. But what about if he has ace king? You're doing so well against that.
Yeah.
So you think that he might have missed the fact that you were in the hand though, too?
That was going through my head when I started to tank and decide and try to make a decision on what I was going to do, because the player that was limping was right next to him, and it wouldn't make sense, but yeah, he could shove just the flop with a decent hand against the guy that only has 400. Like, if you know what I mean?
So I'm going to actually, I don't know if I've actually ever said this because it's never come up. I'm going to give the reverse take of what I usually talk about in games where in very, very restricted buy-in games, I think that there are situations where it actually benefits you long-term within that session to sometimes give up a sliver of equity and gamble. And what I'm talking about is like, maybe you don't have the equity by a few percentage points, but like you're on a draw, you call off on a draw, but you're going to buy in for the maximum if you lose. You know that the guy who beats you, if you break out, he's going to have a lot of money in front of them, and that's great for you. That's great for the table. This is actually an extreme, possibly the opposite way. Like meaning that like all things considered, let's say that this was absolutely neutral EV. Like just absolutely dead even, like whatever, just entirely indifferent, you might pass here because now if you lose, you go down to 0 and you can only rebuy for 500. Yeah, this guy will. Now, if it was a match the stack game, of course I would call if it was 0 EV. But so you can only buy in for 500, right? If you go to felt.
Exactly. So you're talking about the edge that I have by staying deep.
Well, I talked about how your win rate right now. How are there other people that are deep besides you and this guy in this hand?
Maybe 900.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe 1,000 or something like that. But me and him are definitely the deepest.
What I'm trying to get at is right now, usually with an image type of thing, and covering especially if there's other deep people at the table, with an image type of thing and covering with a lot of money, other weak players. Right now, your win rate on average is very high because you're so deep if there's other sort of deeper stacks in the game, especially with a good image. So let's say that your win rate in this game is normally like, I'm just going to throw out a number like $40 an hour, $30, $40 an hour. But like in this setup, it's like $60, $70 an hour. If you gamble on a 0 EV type of thing and you go down to 0, now all of a sudden your win rate goes back down to what that is. And if you win and you break the guy and there is that, but if everybody else is shallow, it's just like here in this extreme example, I actually think it hurts you to go more down to 0 than it does to go up to 5,800. I don't think that I've ever actually brought that, because usually we talk about gambling to get more money on the table. Now that's assuming that it's just entirely 0 EV, which maybe it's not.
But here we're capped. Like we cannot buy in deeper than.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
no, that's interesting. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, it might be one of those types of things, but I mean, even if you just have it in your head that like he might not know that you're in the hand, and he might be making this absurd bet, because it would make sense that he's just trying to put the other guy all in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was such a bizarre spot, and that's actually a really good point. I never even thought about the value of staying this deep, especially when other players can get somewhere close to even being 2,000, 2,200 deep and still have them covered. The value in that.
By the way, is this the type of guy that you want to? You are in position. Is he like is this a guy that you think you can extract from? This guy,
100 billion%.
Well, then there you go. Then I think if you might even make a case where like it's possible, like you overall, like let's say the pot gets up to like 5,000-6,000 in this situation, and like you give up like a couple of percentages in the pot. So maybe you give up like $100 in equity, but you're like, well, if I lose, especially if the guy's like the type of guy that might like walk away, I'm not deep with the guy. If I win, maybe he goes away, but now, or he's the only amount that you can buy in for 500. You could make a case to pass on a close situation like that.
Right, because I'm going to get a better spot.
Well, it's not just like a better spot. Yes, yes, that would argue that your spots long term here at the stack depth against this guy, you can just, you're going to be printing the hours that you stay in this position this deep against this guy. And again, if it was a match the stacker, you could just rebuy and cover him, then it wouldn't make any difference. But because it's so restricted, you lose that extra hourly each hour that you go by when you go down to 0 and then have to buy in for 500. So those are some, now when it goes down to the hand itself, yeah, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, I don't know the last time I saw a bet like this. Honestly, like if you're only 45% against ace queen, is that what we said? 42%, 45% against ace queen?
It's got to be close to 40, 45, I think. Yeah. And then against a set, I'm like 30%.
Right. So Nate says we have 45% against all ace queen. I mean, that would mean that you should fold.
Yeah.
What did you end up doing?
I'm not 100% positive at the time that he knew I was in the hand or not, which added into my decision making. And then I figured, I'm live against anything. I mean, there's one combo of aces left, and if he has aces, then it's an absolute disaster. But even against a set of queens,
well, of course you're live. You have the nut flush draw. I mean, and you have pair blockers to boats.
Like if I have like sevens here, I feel like it would be even a worse situation.
I don't know. I would snap with sevens here. No, absolutely no, because again, like I don't think sets play like this fast, like on the top side like this, like aces and queens, unless you're convinced that the guy didn't know that you were in the hand. I would much rather have sevens here than ace king spades. Much rather. Gotcha. It's not even close. Because look, what's sevens against ace queen?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
100%.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, the only reason I said that is because at the time I put him on ace queen minimum. Anyway, yeah, it was just too much hand, I thought at the time. I'm there to try to win that pot. So I did end up calling. It was bizarre too, because if you would have just made a regular size bet, the turn card would have allowed me to get away because the turn was a queen.
So hero calls. I assume that the EP guy gets out of the way.
Yeah, the guy just ends up folding.
So the turn's a queen. So you're all in, gigantic pot, turn's a queen. Why would the turn get you out? Wouldn't that mean that it's less? Well, I mean, if the turn's a queen, now it's less likely that he has ace queen, and it's less likely that he's got pocket queens, right?
Yeah, I'm just from the situation, or from the strength that I was getting from his hand. I figured, like I said, if it was ace queen minimum, then the queen allows me to at least not put too much money into the pot where I'm committed.
Well, this sounds bad then if you're talking about that. The river is not a spade?
No, the river's actually a 7. And he had pocket queens. He had queens. He had a set of queens.
So he did have pocket queens. Wow.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So that's a big pot that you lost. So you go in, let me ask you this so did the guy stay that deep, like with 6,000? Did he play on and on in the session?
Played, I think, for maybe an hour or an hour and a half, and then ended up leaving.
See, that's the other thing of concern in these situations is like when a guy gets up that big, even though there's no one to cover him, they might just leave because that's a huge win in a game like this. Because you had said the game just started too, right?
Yeah, we were on only 3-4 hours.
Yeah, and then he just gets up and he leaves like, oh, sorry guys, my wife's calling me, like one of those types of things. And you can only buy back in for 500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to get your opinion on this too, because obviously it's a bizarre situation, and I think again it was an extremely good point by saying the deeper that you are, the longer that you can stay in that kind of position, the more profitable you'll be.
Right.
What was your strategy early on when taking profit? Like in a game like this, for example, where I never in for 500 up for 29.
I mean, listen, the only time I was never a part-time player taking profit in a cash game, the only time that I would ever get up from the table, and I've talked about this many, many times, is when if the table was bad, I thought I was playing bad, like I had a really shitty image, I would never take profit just to take profit, because the times that I was up and winning were the sessions that I would always want to play the longest, because that's inherently where my hourly would go. And I have a lot of experience playing in capped games. Now, the primary game I played was 5, 10, 1500 cap. So you would get into situations where you could get very, very deep. Like I'm talking over 10,000. Pretty rare that somebody would ever be at 10,000 with you. But there was this whole image consideration. But in that game, I didn't have to worry about somebody sitting to my left and covering me that was going to battle me. Now, when I played 1020 uncapped, were there times when I ever was up a bunch of money and then had to leave because a guy to my left was giving me fits? Maybe once or twice. There was this guy named Shane Rose. I'm dating myself. He was a monster back in the day. He always used to give me fits, but in a capped game, it's just, yeah, the idea of taking profit, just, it doesn't really calculate unless you are trying to do something like on a short roll and you develop some sort of system. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me if you're overall winning player, especially when usually in these types of setups, the more money you have in front of you, image, and then usually better than the other players, the more money you're going to win in that session towards the end of the session. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So,
yeah, I've always been of the same mindset where as long as the game is good, I'm staying, regardless of.
it's a good mindset. So, and a lot of people do it the opposite way, right? They want to chase their losses, which is obviously the worst. The people you see
Right.
there stuck, they're chasing because they're getting stuck. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.